Hello everyone and welcome to today's session on Accenture's interview question at Simplilearn. In today's session, we will be covering the commonly asked Accenture's interview questions. Do you know, friends, that Accenture's screening process involves 3 rounds? The first one is online assessment test. Next one is a technical round. And finally, after you clear that, you proceed for an HR round. So in today's session, we will be discussing the technical round interview questions. I have curated questions based on OOPS concept, SQL, and most commonly asked questions based on your Java programming languages. Now, before we move on, I request you guys that do not forget to hit the subscribe button and click the bell icon for further updates.
Craving a career upgrade? Subscribe, like, and comment below. Dive into the link in the description to fast-track your ambitions. Whether you're making a switch or aiming higher, Simplilearn has your back.
Now, before we move on, just a quick info, guys. If you want to become a full-stack Java developer, then Simplilearn has got you covered. You can accelerate your career as a certified Java full-stack developer and acquire essential industrial skills like React, Angular, Spring Boot, Hibernate, and JSPs while mastering MVC and web services to craft highly scalable web applications. So hurry up now and join the course. The course link is mentioned in the description box. So guys, let's start with our first question. That is, what is the significance of using objects in OOPS programming as compared to procedural programming? Now, as we all know, that objects provide a way to model real-world entities and their interactions with software. Unlike in procedural programming, where functions manipulate data, in object-oriented programming, it encapsulates data and behavior into the objects. This makes code more modular, organized, and easier to understand and also maintain. Objects promote reusability, scalability, and flexibility in software development. So this was all about significance of objects in OOPS programming language. This is one of the basic questions and can be expected to be a starting question in your interview. Now let's move on to the next question. So next question is also kind of very basic. It says, explain the concept of class with an example. Now guys, as we all know, that class is like a blueprint that defines the properties and behaviors of the objects. Consider the class car. It defines characteristics such as color, model, speed, behaviors such as driving and stopping. Each car object created from this class will have its own unique state like the color and model, and behavior like driving and stopping. But they all share the same structure defined by the car class. So this was one of the basic example. If somebody asks you what is class and explain it with example, you can quote this example. Now let's move on to our third question. That is, how does encapsulation helps in managing complexity in software development? So guys, encapsulation is the bundling of data, means attributes and methods that operate on the data into single unit, that's object. It hides the internal state of an object and restricts the direct access to it, allowing it for better control over data access and manipulation. Encapsulation helps manage complexity by providing a clear interface for interacting with objects, reducing the risk of unintended data modification, and making it easier to maintain and refactor the code. Now, let's move on to our next example. That is, provide an example of encapsulation in Java. So guys, we all know that in Java, encapsulation is achieved using access modifiers like public, private, and protected. For example, a class might have private fields like attributes such as name, age, and public methods like behaviors like getName and setName to access and modify these fields. This ensures that the internal state of the object is protected from direct external access and also maintaining encapsulation. So in this way, you can just quote the example. Now, I will show you one example by putting up a code, and you can also show a code or dictate a code to your interviewer. So guys, let's say we create a class called public and let's name it as person. Okay. Now, let us create a private variables to hold the data. Now, I will have the data such as name and age. So, private, the data type for name is string. Okay. Next can be your age. So, the data type will be int. Now, let us create a constructor to initialize the object. So, our class name is person. So, we can just create our constructor something like this. So, public person and just add those arguments. So, string name and int age. And finally, here what you can do, guys, that you can bind it up like this dot name equals to name and this dot age equals to age. And then what you can do, guys, is create getters and setters. Okay. So in this way, our half of the work is done. Okay. Now, what will be the getters and setters? So I'll show you once. So it would be, say, public string get name and here we can say, okay, let us return the name. And for the setter, we can write something like this, public void set name. And here, you can name string name. And similarly, you can just set the name as this dot name equals to name. And similarly, you have to create it for the age. Okay. So I have created it for the name. Okay. And similarly, just create it for the age. Now, finally, just create the object. Okay. So say public static void main string. Okay. And let us create the object as person p equals to new person. And finally, you can add these things. So say the name as Neil and say age as 80. And finally, just you can print this system out dot println, and finally just add p dot. So this shows an example of encapsulation. This was kind of lengthier, but you can dictate this to your interviewer, and I think so it would be perfect answer to show that you are clear with the concept of encapsulation. Now let us proceed for the next question. That is, what is inheritance and how does it promote code reuse? So guys, as we all know, that inheritance is a key concept in object-oriented programming that allows class like a subclass or derived class to inherit properties and behaviors from another class that's called superclass. This promotes code reuse by allowing the subclass to reuse the code or methods and variables defined in the superclass. So this is how it promotes the code reusability. A very easy question. Now, let us move on to the next question. So guys, our next question is, describe a real-world scenario where inheritance would be beneficial. Now, as we all know, that inheritance allows class to inherit the properties and behavior of another class, and it promotes the code reuse by enabling the subclass to inherit the properties and functionality from their superclasses. This kind of reduces redundancy, improves maintainability, and facilitates the creation of specialized classes that builds upon the existing functionality. Now you can quote an example, something like this, that we can consider modeling different type of vehicles. The superclass vehicle could contain common attributes like color, speed, and behaviors like start and stop. Subclasses like car and truck and motorcycle would inherit from the vehicle and add their specific attributes and behaviors such as number of doors for cars, cargo capacity for trucks. So in this way, you can describe a real-world scenario that makes the use of inheritance. Now let us move on to the next question. So guys, our next question is, what is polymorphism and how does it improve flexibility in programming? So guys, we all know that polymorphism is a fundamental concept in object-oriented programming that allows objects of different types to be treated as objects of common superclass. It enables a single interface to represent multiple underlying data types, providing flexibility in programming. Basically, there are two types of polymorphism. The first one is compile time polymorphism and the second one is runtime polymorphism. So, if I talk about compile time polymorphism, it occurs when multiple methods in the same class have same number but different parameter list. The compiler determines which method to call based on the method signature, whereas method overloading allows for flexibility in method invocation as when the appropriate method is chosen based on the number of arguments provided. If I talk about the runtime polymorphism, basically also known as method overriding, it occurs when a subclass provides a specific implementation of a method that is already defined in the superclass. At runtime, the JVM determines which method to execute based on the actual type of the object. Method overriding also allows for flexibility in method behavior as different subclasses can provide their own implementations of the same method. Now, polymorphisms improve flexibility in programming in many ways, like code reusability, then extensibility, and also enhance abstraction. So this makes the answer complete for this question. I hope so you would have got a brief idea regarding polymorphism and the types of polymorphism involved in it. Now let's move on to our next question. So guys, our next question is, give an example of polymorphism using method overriding. So guys, let us code this question. So what I'm going to do, let us create a class called animal, okay? And we'll make a method like sound and we'll try to make it like print that animal makes a sound. Then we're going to create a subclass of the animal that is dog and we are going to override the make sound method. Okay, so let us directly deep dive into that. Okay, so let us create our parent class first. So let's say class animal. Okay, then let's create a method. So I'll say public void make sound. Okay, and I can just print certain thing like okay, so I printed certain thing like this. Now let us create a inherited class, okay, or a child class. So let us say that we can say like class animal, okay. So class dog and it extends, okay, this is this keyword demonstrate that we are using inheritance right now, and we can say it directly inherits from the class animal. Now what we are going to do right now, that we are going to override this method called make sound. So let's use that annotation and let's copy this method and paste it right over here. Okay. And in this, what we can do, we can override it, say now let us create the objects. So I'll say that this is our main method. So I'll just write the short form PVSM. Okay, and okay, now say dog D equals to new dog, and we can just call here like system and we can just call this method called make sound. So d dot make sound method. Pretty fine. So this shows the example of how method writing is done. Okay. And we are using inheritance in this. So I hope so you have got a brief idea regarding this. So guys, let's start with the next question. It says, explain the importance of access modifiers in controlling access to the class members. So guys, as we all know that access modifiers play a very crucial role in controlling access to the class members like fields, methods, constructors in Java. They define the visibility and accessibility of the class members within and outside the class, ensuring proper encapsulation and maintaining the integrity of the class implementation. The importance of access modifiers lies in several key aspects like encapsulation, data hiding, and security. So these were some of the importance of access modifiers. I hope so you would have got a brief idea regarding this. Now let's move on to our next question. That says, what is the difference between public, private, and protected access modifiers? So guys, the difference between public, private, and protected access modifiers lies in the visibility and accessibility of the class members. Now, if I talk about public members are accessible from any other class or packages. They have the widest scope of visibility, allowing them to be accessed from anywhere in the program. And if we talk about protected guys, protected members are accessible within the same class, subclasses, and class within the same package. They provide more visibility than the private members, but restrict access from the class outside the package. Now, if we talk about the private members are accessible only within the same class. They are hidden from other classes, restricting access to the class internal implementation details. Very basic difference between the three. I hope so you would have got an idea regarding this. Now let's move on and discuss our next question. So guys, our next question is, how do constructors contribute to object initialization in Java? Very amazing question, and this has a high probability to be asked in the interview. So guys, as we all know that constructors play a very critical role in object initialization in Java by setting up the initial state of an object. When the object is created using the new keyword, a new constructor is called to allocate the memory for the new object and to initialize its field. So it sets up the initial values. Then what it does guys, it provides overloaded constructors. Java allows constructors to be overloaded, enabling the creation of objects with different initial states depending on the constructor used. Suppose if I have a class called person and I declare the fields such as private string name and private int age. Now, if I create a default constructor like public person and I bind it up like this.name and set the state to unknown and this.age equals to 0. So in this way, I'm setting the initial state of the given arguments. So these are all the behaviors which are going to be set in our object when it is going to get initialized. Similarly, you can put a parameterized constructor like suppose public person, and inside this you put string name int age. Now bind it up. After binding, just create the getter setters, and after that when you are creating the object like person1 and person2, then you can add like name and age. So in this way you are going to get an output, because whenever you are trying to print out the object name dot given getter like get name or get age, so your output is going to get printed out. So suppose in this case guys, if I try to print out person1 dot say get age, so it's going to print like 30 because 30 is the stage which I put it up. So just an overview of it. In this way you can explain this question, but basically setting up an initial state and also providing overloaded constructors are the two main reasons that they contribute to the object initialization. Now let's move on to the next question. So guys, our next question is, explain the different types of inheritance. Very fundamental question and can be asked most of the time. So guys, in object-oriented programming language, inheritance allows a class to inherit the properties and behavior from the another class. There are several types of inheritance. So the first one is single inheritance. If I talk about single inheritance, in this scenario, a class is going to inherit from one and only one superclass. Next one we have is multiple inheritance. Here, in this scenario, a class can inherit from more than one superclass. So guys, we all know that Java does not support multiple inheritance because of the ambiguity. So this can be achieved only through interfaces. Next one we have all over here is multi-level inheritance. In this scenario, a class is derived from another class, which is also derived from another class, creating a chain of inheritance, like you can see all over here. So superclass, subclass 1 derived, and there is subclass 2. And finally, you have the hybrid inheritance. So in the case of hybrid inheritance, you get to see that two classes are derived from a superclass and one class is derived from two superclasses. So you get a chance to see a scenario of hybrid inheritance. Now, here in the hierarchy, where you have one superclass and three different subclasses are derived from one superclass. So this is a scenario for your hierarchy. So these were some of the different type of inheritance you can explain to your interviewer. Now, let's move on to the next question. So guys, our next question is, what is the default constructor and when does it gets invoked? So guys, the default constructor in Java is no argument constructor that automatically is provided by the compiler if no other constructors are explicitly defined in a class. It initializes the object with default values. So this is all about default constructor. Now let's move on and discuss about the next question. Our next question is, describe a situation where you can use method overloading. So like very simple guys, whenever we want to use method overloading, so suppose in a scenario where you are creating a calculator and you have created a method, certain thing like addition, and where you are generally returning a plus b. Now you have overloaded the given method and added the third argument. Like in the first one, we took two arguments a and b, and we were returning the sum of the two. And in the third one, we can see it is returning the three arguments, means the sum of the three arguments, like a plus b plus c. So this is a situation which is using the method overloading. Very simple example. You can demonstrate this example to tell that you are aware of the concept of method overloading. Now let's move on and discuss the next question. So guys, next question is, what is the role of static methods in Java and how do they differ from instance method? So guys, we all know that static methods in Java belong to the class rather than any specific instance, meaning that they can be called without creating an object of the class. They are defined using the static keyword. Instance method, on the other hand, require an object of the class to be created and called upon the object. So guys, these were some of the role of the static methods. Now, if I talk about the key differences, the first one is access. Static methods are called using the class name, while instance methods are called using the objects. The second one comes on the context. Static methods cannot access instance variable or instance method directly because they do not operate on an instance of the class. Third one is usage. Static methods are used for operations that do not require data from them instead, like utility or helper methods. So this were one of the basic answer to this question. Now let's move on to the next question. So guys, our next question is, give an example of a situation where you would use a static method. So guys, a common situation where you can use a static method is when creating utility or helper methods that perform general purpose tasks that do not require any data from the instance of the class. For example, consider a utility class that provides mathematical operation. So say you create a class called mathutils and you have the static method to calculate the square of a number. So here public static int square int number, and just you can return number cross number. So again, you can create a static method to calculate the factorial. Similarly, public static int factorial, and you take a number n, and finally you take a for loop and result the multiplication of the given chain of numbers. So that's how you return the factorial. I hope so you are aware of the logic, like how would you create a method for factorial. Now finally, in this scenario, what we are doing, that we are creating a certain helper class, and in a situation we are creating a static method. So while printing the factorial, or in the scenario or basically printing the square. So I've created all these two static methods and they are helping me out. So in this situation, you can use the static method. So I hope so you have got an idea regarding this. It's also one of the most important questions. So please take a look on this one. Now let's move on to the next question. So guys, our next question is, what is a concept of abstraction and its relevance in software development? So guys, if I talk about abstraction, abstraction in software development is a concept of hiding complex implementation details of a system and exposing only the essential features and functionalities to the user. This is achieved by creating abstract classes and interfaces that define what actions can be performed but not how they are performed. So this is a basic idea regarding abstraction. I hope so you have got a brief idea regarding this. Now let's move on and discuss about next question. So one of the most frequently asked question, it says, what is the difference between method and constructor in Java? Now I know many of you get confused when this question is asked. So in this way you can answer this question. So guys, in Java, methods and constructors are both integral part of the classes, but they serve kind of distinct purposes. A method is a block of code that performs a specific task and can be invoked multiple times within a class. Methods can have a return types and parameters, allowing for flexibility and code reuse. On the other hand, if I talk about constructor, it is a special type of method that is used to utilize objects of a class. Constructors are invoked automatically when an object is created and are responsible for setting initial values to the object attributes. Unlike methods, constructors do not have return types and their names must match with the class name. So this is the basic difference between methods and constructors. Now let's move on and discuss the next question. So guys, our next question is, can an abstract class have a constructor? So the answer to the same question is, yes guys, an abstract class can have a constructor, and the purpose of the constructor in an abstract class is like to initialize the common properties or perform set of tasks that are required by the subclasses. So this was the answer to this question. Very tricky question, and please take a note of this one. Now let's move on to the next question. That is, can an abstract class have static methods? If yes, then provide an example where this might be useful. So guys, yes, abstract classes can have static methods, and static methods in abstract class can provide utility functions or behavior that is not tied to the particular any instance of the class. These methods can be called directly on the class itself without the need to instantiate an object. So, for example, here is a scenario. So guys, let us create an abstract class called shape. And say, let's create public static. Here I'm going to create a double, and in this I'll say, let's calculate the area. Okay, now here you give the argument, say double and say radius. You can return here math.pi, or you can give 22/7 and just multiply radius cross radius. Now what do you have to do next? Let us create a static method to calculate the parameter. So if I talk about the same, so here you can create certain thing like this, public static, okay, and double, so charger laptop. So guys, here what you can do, let's create public static double and say calculate perimeter. And in this, what I can take radius as the argument and return 2 cross math.pi star radius. Okay, so this is a thing, and so you can see all over here we have created these two stuff. So in our abstract class, we have created two static methods. Now let's try to create a class called circle, and it will extend the abstract class shape. The class circle extends, say, shape. Okay. Now so I have declared a variable called radius. Okay. Then create a constructor all over here. So I won't create it. Just I'll leave you to do it. Okay. Now next, what you can do all over here in the main method. Okay. So pvsm string args. Okay. What I can do, I can create an object of circle. So say circle C equals to new circle, and here you can give the radius. So suppose I give as 5. Okay. So after that, what you can do, guys, you can call the method such as system.out.println, and you can calculate the area plus the perimeter. How? With the name of the method. So our object is C. So C dot, you can just call this method, and C dot calculate perimeter. So in this way, guys, it's going to calculate the entire thing for our area and the perimeter, provided we have given our radius. So this example shows that abstract classes can have static methods. Very important question. Please do take a look on this. Now let's move on to our next question. Next question says, is it possible for an abstract class to have final methods? And the answer is yes. It is possible for an abstract class to have final methods. Like a final method in an abstract class cannot be overridden by its subclasses, which ensures that its behaviors remains consistent across all the subclasses. So one of the very important questions, and it is generally asked in the interview. So please take a note of this one. So guys, let us discuss the next question. So guys, our next question is that can abstract class implement an interface without providing implementations for all its methods? And the answer is yes. An abstract class can implement an interface without providing implementations for all its methods. However, in this scenario, the abstract class itself must be declared as abstract, meaning it does not have to provide implementations for all the methods defined in the interface. The subclasses of the abstract class will then be responsible for implementing the remaining interface methods. Let's move on to the next question. So guys, our next question is, what happens if abstract class does not contain any abstract methods? Very amazing question. And the answer to the same is, like, if an abstract class does not contain any abstract methods, it behaves similarly to a regular class. However, because it is declared as an abstract, it cannot be instantiated directly. Instances of concrete subclasses of the abstract class can be created, but there is no requirement for these subclasses to provide implementations for these methods. So this is the answer to this question. Now let's move on to the next question. So guys, our next question is, can you create an instance of an abstract class? So guys, the answer to the same is no. You cannot create an instance of an abstract class directly in Java. Attempting to instantiate an abstract class using the new keyword will result in a compilation error. So this is one of the things. And the purpose of an abstract class is to serve as a blueprint for the other classes to extend and implement. It typically contains one or more abstract methods that must be implemented by its subclasses. So this is the overall scenario of this. Now, let us discuss the next question. The next question is, how do abstract classes support polymorphism? So guys, if I talk about the abstract classes supporting polymorphism in Java, it is by allowing subclasses to provide their own implementations for the abstract method, while still being treated as instances of the abstract class. This means that you can use a reference to the abstract class to refer to the objects of its subclasses. And the polymorphic behavior is exhibited when invoking overridden methods. So this is the answer to this question. Now let's move on and discuss the next question. So guys, our next question is, can an abstract class have private methods? And why would you use a private method in an abstract class? So guys, answer to this question is yes, an abstract class can have private methods in Java. Private methods in an abstract class are not inherited by subclasses, and they are also not accessible outside the abstract class itself. However, they can still be used within other methods of the same abstract class. So guys, this is the answer to this question. Now, why should we use a private method in an abstract class? The first reason is code organization. Private methods help organize the implementation details of the abstract class by encapsulating certain functionality that is not meant to be accessed or overridden by the subclasses. Next one is code reusability. Private methods can be reused within the abstract class itself, reducing the code duplication and promoting maintainability. Third one is implementation detail. Private methods can represent implementation details or helper methods that are not part of the public interface of the abstract class, but are necessary for its proper functioning. So this was the answer to this question. I hope so you would have got a brief idea regarding this. Now let's move on to the next question. So guys, our next question is, how would you design an abstract class to ensure that certain methods must be implemented by all subclasses, but other methods still have a default implementation? First, let's try to understand this question. It is basically asking you to design an abstract class, and here you have to ensure that all the methods, or like certain methods, must be implemented by all the subclasses, but other methods also should have default implementation. So like we did, let us think of the answer to this solution. Say we create an abstract class called shape, and we have an abstract method that must be implemented by the subclasses. So say we create an public abstract double calculate area, okay, and this is abstract method. Now in order to provide a default implementation for the method, okay, so that it can be overridden, I create another method like public string get color, and I return the given color, say like blue or green. Then I provide a default implementation for the method that subclasses can inherit. So public void display info, and like here I am basically printing the get color. Okay. Now finally, when you create another class which is child of this, and here you can override with the public string get color, and here you can change the color from blue to red. So this way you can do it, and this is one of the way where you can design an abstract class so that you can ensure that all the classes are implemented by the other methods. So guys, I have given you a brief idea regarding this question. I'm not showing you the code of this question, and you should try this question by yourself. Give it a thought, try for 5-10 minutes, and if you are not getting it, write down a comment on this video and we'll definitely get back to you. Now, let us move on to the next question. So guys, our next question is, can an abstract class inherit from another abstract class? A very interesting question, and the answer is yes. An abstract class can inherit from another abstract class. This allows basically for hierarchical abstraction, where each abstract class can define their own set of abstract method to be implemented by the subclasses. Now let's move on to the next question. And the next question is pretty interesting one. It says, how do abstract classes handle constructors in an inheritance chain? So guys, in an inheritance chain involving abstract classes, constructors are basically called in a top-down manner, like starting from the superclass down to the subclass. Here, each of the constructor initializes the respective class state before passing control to the next constructor in the chain. Like suppose if I have a class abstract animal and I create a default constructor like public animal and just print out certain thing inside this, that animal constructor. Now I create an abstract class called mammal and it is extending animal. So I create a constructor public mammal and I just print out in this system.out.println like mammal constructor. Now similarly you can create another class called dog and it is extending the mammal. Okay. Now I create a constructor for this. It says public dog and I'm printing out this constructor. So similarly when I'm trying to create an object of dog, okay, so the output which I'm going to get is first the animal constructor, okay, then the mammal constructor and then the dog constructor. So the top-down approach is always there. Guys, it's a pretty much of a tricky question, okay, so give a thought on this one. So guys, our next question is, can an abstract class be final? Why or why not? So guys, the answer to this question is no, an abstract class cannot be final because it's meant to be extended by subclasses to provide concrete implementation for its abstract methods. Making an abstract class final would prevent inheritance and contradicting its purpose. So it's not possible. Most of the time, interviewers ask this question to make the candidate, confused. So if it is asked in your interview, please do remember the answer of this question. Now let's move on and discuss the next question. So guys, our next question is, why might you choose to use abstract class instead of an interface, even though both can define methods that subclasses need to implement? Very tricky question and it can trouble you a little bit. So the answer to the same question is, guys, that you might choose an abstract class instead of an interface, like when you want to provide a partial implementation of the functionality that the subclasses can inherit. If I talk about abstract classes can have member variables, constructors, and non-abstract methods. They provide more flexibility and code reuse compared to the interfaces. So guys, our next question is, what is the difference between inner join, left join, right join, and full outer join? So guys, the answer to the same question is that first one is inner join. So guys, as you can see in this diagram, that inner join returns a row when there is at least one match in the both tables. If I talk about the left join, it returns all the rows from the left table and match the rows from the right table. If I talk about the right join returns all the rows from the right table and the matched rows from the left table. If I talk about the full outer join, it returns all the rows even when there is no match in the table. Now let's move on and discuss the next question. That is, what are the difference between union and union all? So guys, if I talk about union, so union combines the result of two or more selected statements, removing the duplicates. Whereas union all also combines results but retains the duplicates. Let's discuss the next question. That is, how can you optimize a SQL query that uses multiple joins and subqueries? So guys, you can optimize a SQL query with multiple joins and subqueries using indexes on join columns, limiting the result set with where clauses and ensuring that subqueries are efficient and return the necessary data. Now let's discuss the next question. That is, how do group by and having clause work with SQL? So guys, we all know that group by groups rows that have same values into the summary rows and having filter groups based on specified conditions. Let's just discuss the next question. That is, explain the concept of normalization and what are the different normal forms and why is normalization important? So guys, first answer to the same, that is, normalization is a process of organizing data in a database efficiently. The different normal forms like 1NF, 2NF, 3NF, BCNF are there. They are used to eliminate the redundancy and dependency issues, improving the data integrity and reducing the anomalies. Now let's move on and discuss the next question. That is, what is the difference between truncate, delete, and drop statements in SQL? So guys, if I talk about truncate removes all the rows from the table without logging individual row deletions. If I talk about delete delete removes the specific rows, and drop deletes an entire table or database object. Now let's move on and discuss the next question. That is, what is a stored procedure? So guys, a stored procedure is a pre-compiled set of SQL statements stored in a database. It can accept parameters, execute SQL queries, and return results, enhancing the performance and security. Next question, very important. It says, explain the concepts of trigger in SQL. So guys, a trigger in a SQL is a special type of stored procedure that automatically executes when certain events occur, such as insert, update, delete operations on a table. Triggers are used to enforce business rules, maintain data integrity, and automate the task. With this, we have come to the end of our question. That is, what are the security considerations when using stored procedures and triggers in a database? So guys, very amazing question, and it's a kind of practical one. So the answer to the same is that security considerations when using stored procedures and triggers includes such as parameter validation to prevent SQL injection attacks, proper permissions to restrict access to the sensitive data or operations, and also auditing to track changes made by stored procedures and triggers. Additionally, using parameterized queries and limiting privileges can help mitigate the security risks. So guys, that was all for today's video. I hope so you would have enjoyed our today's video on Accenture programming language. Keep learning and keep growing.
Staying ahead in your career requires continuous learning and upskilling. Whether you're a student aiming to learn today's top skills or a working professional looking to advance your career, we've got you covered. Explore our impressive catalog of certification programs in cutting-edge domains, including data science, cloud computing, cybersecurity, AI, machine learning, or digital marketing. Designed in collaboration with leading universities and top corporations, and delivered by industry experts, choose any of our programs and set yourself on the path to career success. Click the link in the description to know more.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.